Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 235. Today we're going to talk about Canalis. This is from AEG, just released. It's in their Tempest line, which is sort of a series of Euro games in the same universe. This one's designed by Philip Dubarry, who did already a game in this universe, and he's done a couple other games. It's kind of a weird game. It plays 2 to 4 players, and it combines card drafting, sort of like in Seven Wonders, sort of. Everybody's going to have a hand of cards, you pick one and play it. Pass your cards to the left, and everybody keeps passing and playing cards. What you're doing with the cards is basically 2 things. Each card has 2 sections on it. So you either usually build something with the card, or you collect some money or some points, or do some effect in the card itself. So you do that basically 4 rounds of that, and you try to control different buildings and canals and all kinds of different things on this main central board. So let's take a look at it, and I'll tell you what I think. Okay, so I've got the game board and all the pieces laid out here. A couple of things to notice. You've got sort of a main city grid here. Now we have these resource tokens here, which are randomly dealt out. There's 6 of them. They're going to go along the board here. You're going to place 2 of the others off to the side. These could come into play through playing some cards. Now the first thing players are going to do is you're going to randomly shuffle up these different faction boards here. And these are actually double-sided. So the rules kind of are ambiguous about this. You can mix them up, and whatever side you get, you're dealt, or maybe you can give them the token and then they can choose. So you're going to get this. It's going to give you a special ability that may or may not use guile. So sometimes you'll have an ability here. You'll get some of these guile tokens, and then basically you can see it's got 3. So basically you can do that ability 3 times in the game, and then you spend a guile like that. Otherwise you'll get different abilities that won't require a guile. Maybe it'll be like an ability that happens at the beginning of the game. You also get a mission here. These are sort of public missions that you're going to look at the end of the game, and then you're going to actually score that many points. So like place all chapels next to resource tiles other than workers. If that happens, then you score 10 points. And then you can see this guy's guile ability actually is to place a chapel during your turn. So everybody's going to choose one of these, and then you're going to get these markers here in your color, so to speak. And this is my main gripe with the components in the game. You can see this here. We've got this, and you've got X's on the side. That's fine. So after you've scored a building, you'll flip it from the X up to the sigil side. You also use one of these to track the points up there. Well, that's the red player, let's say. Now we've got another player like here. So his also looks very similar. And then each of the colors here, you can see the different faction icons. They actually don't look too bad here, but once you get the little ones out on the board, it is kind of difficult to see, who is who, especially if we look at X's, because these 2 are pretty easy to tell apart, but you've got other kind of shades of pink and, different colors. I don't know. They should have used cubes, in my opinion. Now, you do have to sort of flip them over once we put a building out, and then you mark that it's scored so you don't score it again, but I don't know. Something that's I don't know. I just don't like that at all, but other than that, the components are pretty good. So what are you going to do in the game? First thing you're going to do is you're going to grab these secret missions here. You're going to deal 2 to each player, and these are similar to the missions on your faction board, except these are secret. And these are going to be a variety of things. Certain buildings are built, certain buildings have scored, certain configurations on the board, stuff connected to the harbors. You can see here on the board we have gardens in the corners, and then harbors here. So there'll be some different goals there that you're going to score points on. You may get other cards during the game, or even some of your rolls will let you draw extras of these. So you're going to get 2 of these at least. You're going to shuffle up these 2 decks here. So you can see we've got 1 and 2, and then a 3 and 4. So depending on the number of players, you're going to play rounds and deal a certain number of cards. Like in a 3-player game, you'll get 5 cards in a hand. So basically, you can round 1 and 2, you're going to use this deck, and then rounds 3 and 4, you're going to draw cards from this deck. And depending on the number of players, you may discard some cards out of the deck so that all the cards kind of evenly divide out. And then on your turn, let's just take a look at some of these cards. You're going to basically choose a card. Say these are the cards in my hand. I'm going to choose one of these, put it face down, set these aside, and then everybody's going to reveal in turn order, and then do either the top action or the bottom action. Then you're going to pass the cards to the player. You're going to get the other cards from the other players to your right, and then you choose one of the cards they handed you, put them down, and then every time you play a card, the first player is going to move around as well, which is important because this is a shared board and there's going to be competition for space. But that's basically what we do. So if, let's say you had 5 cards in a 3-player game, you're going to play 5 cards worth, draw some more cards and play those out, and then you go through the 3 and 4 deck, and then that's the game. So what are some of the things that you can do? Well, the top part is usually a build action. So this is going to tell you to build a garden or a 2-space canal, or excuse me, and a 2-space canal. And then, or you can get $3. That's the scheme. So here's a build. We can build a tenement here, and it shows you a picture of the building. So there's stacks of buildings. I'll show you them in a second. But the nice thing about this, one of the nice components, qualities of the game, is it shows you a nice picture of the building, so you can see how much it costs and what it's going to do. And then here you can do the scheme. So you can take an extra guile token. Remember, those work with some special abilities, or you just score 4 points. So here we can build these 2 things, or we can do some manipulations with the canals. We can build a bigger canal, gain $3. This is basically what the cards do. So you usually build something, or collect some money, or do some different effect. So what is the purpose of doing all this? How does this board work? How do the different buildings work? So let's talk about that now. Well, here at the top of the board above the score track, you can see all of the different building types. Now when I first looked at this, I did not like how they had this set up, because if we can look here at these buildings here, so we can see these are all the 2-space buildings. Well, these are industrial buildings, and these are the end of game sort of special buildings, these white ones, and we've got some gardens there. So all of these different types are in the same stack, which you think might be, well, how am I going to do this? I've got to go dig through and find everything, but it's actually very easy. If you just put all the industrial buildings on top, and then like all the water and the gardens at the bottom, like here we've got the industrial buildings, we got the tenements, the special buildings, and then we've got the gardens underneath. It's actually very quick to go through and grab a thing that you need, because it'll tell you build the apothecary. You can just go, okay, I know that's at the top, and so I just find the the industrial buildings and then grab that and build it. So what's going to happen is there's a couple of concepts here. So mostly what you're trying to do is score these industrial buildings. So the way that these work, you can see all of the buildings have this little box here with an X. That's going to tell you what happens when you build it, or as a requirement to build it. So this one will cost you $3 to build. And then, but you're going to gain $1 per adjacent tile owned by an opponent. Very simple. And then if we take a look at this one here, the Tinker, costs you $2 to build, and then you get +1 victory point per adjacent building. Doesn't matter who owns it. So these industrial ones are usually have these multicolored borders here. Now the little 2 bangers here, these aren't multicolors, because you can see that these actually just require a worker. So again, this one will cost you $1. You get 2 points just for building it. And then here is the requirement. So when you build one of these, what's going to happen is you're going to put one of your little X's on it. And again, once these kind of get out on the board, it's hard to tell. Now once you have basically connected a worker to this, you're going to score 3 points. So you'll flip this over to show you're the owner of it, but it's already been scored. So if somebody else places a worker or connects a worker to this, you know not to score it again. Similar with a larger building here, you can see this one you'll get 7 points once it scores, but this one requires to be adjacent or connected to a worker, as well as to these 2 different resources here. So if we look on the board here, we can see a couple of things. Let's say we had built this out here somewhere, and we know that we need to be connected to a worker, as well as this resource and this resource. Thankfully these are close. So we've got this out here, we've built it, we're going to put our little X on there. And now there's a couple of things, the way that you can sort of connect or be adjacent to. One is you could just be adjacent to it, and then boom, it's kind of like walking distance. The other way that you can connect to it is through the canal tiles. So as we start placing these canal tiles out, these are sort of like little routes and networks to sort of add to the commerce and the economics of this town. So now we've got this canal here going back to that resource. So now this is considered to have been connected there. So if we were to add, let's say, some canals here, like so. So now it's connected to both resources that it needs. So now the only other requirements to score these industrial buildings are, it has to be connected to the resources, and then in this case also a worker. And then they also have to be connected back to one of these 2 harbors, like so. So if we put this out here, let's just put that there for argument's sake. Now it's connected to the harbor. So we're almost done. We're almost ready to score this, but now we need a worker. Now all of the worker tiles are these large square tiles here, and you can see these provide the workers for that building. So if we had worker or tenement built here, maybe another player had built this earlier, then now once this is all connected, then we're going to go ahead and look at and score that building. So how do we score the building? Well, the first thing we're going to notice is we have all the resource requirements and the worker requirements, so it's going to give you 7 points. You're also going to get the money value. See, there's 1 and 2, so you're going to get the money value of the resources required. So in this case, you'd collect $3, which is nice. And then if somebody is providing exclusive workers to the building, they're going to get 10 points. So if we look on the building here, it says tenement 2 points per exclusive use. So in this case, right now, this is the only tenement providing workers to that building. However, if there was another tenement here, then that would not be considered exclusive. So both of these could provide, workers to that building. Now, if these tenements were owned by the same player, then they could still, give the 2 points. You're not going to get penalized for having too many of your own tenements. But if they're coming, in this case, from different, they should be like this actually, different players, then nobody's going to get the 2 points. So that's how you're going to score those. Now you can get certain tiles and or markers on different canals. You can also get these lock tiles here, and if you go through there, you need to pay sort of like a toll, a buck, to be able to use that thing. Now you may also score points for having a garden adjacent. So you can see we've got gardens here in the corners. These are actually very high point values there, 3 and then 5 over there, also 7 out there. Very difficult to score those, but you can also again place these out on the board. So let's say we had a garden adjacent there, you could also get 3 points. Now if you come in and place the garden adjacent to this later, that's already scored, then you're going to generate the 3 points for that person there. So we've seen that most of the buildings here, we got the different resources, the tenements which provide workers for the industrial buildings, the gardens, the canals, the industrial buildings themselves. You've also got these white buildings which are special buildings. We'll take a look at here. So this one is, $5, you get 5 points, and it counts as a harbor for your adjacent buildings, because remember, you always got to connect back to a harbor for that industrial building to score. So that's an interesting one there. This one's $5 and you draw an extra mission card when you build it, and then you gain 2 points for each industrial building you've scored. Some more of these things here. Warehouse, score 2 points for each conducted industrial building that is scored. And some more here. So this is the 12.1, this is the Senate. And so all of these are going to score here at the end of the game. And so this one you get 2 points per $3. So you've got the special buildings that you can get out there. And the way that the decks of cards go is that a lot of the early deck will have more of the canals and things like that. A lot of the later deck will have a lot of these special buildings. So you can kind of sort of, expect that to happen. So you're just going to play through, both decks of cards. You're going to score all the points of your special buildings, any of the secret missions that you had. And that's pretty much it. You're just going to keep taking cards, drafting cards, building or scheming, and that is how you play. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the overview. I'm going to say I do not like this game with anything more than 2 players. Now 3 is alright. I don't really like it that much, but 4 is way too chaotic. But I really enjoy it with 2 players because you get the extra set of cards and you're just kind of going back and forth. So you can really get a sense of what your opponent may be choosing, because you're going to see most of the cards that they're going to have available to them. And you can see sort of, okay, they're going to have a bunch of canals to put out to sort of, make their routes a little bit easier to get out on the board. You can see what kind of, buildings they may build on the future turns. When you have more players, you don't have as many cards going around. You can still make kind of educated guesses about where to play and, different things like that. But it gets really super chaotic, and you can be really, really mean in this game and just, put a building down that just totally hoses somebody out of being able to connect to a canal. And you can kind of play a little bit loose and sort of try to spread out, but the game really kind of constricts on itself, I'd say probably about halfway, and then definitely that last hand of cards, especially with more players, it's just super anticlimactic, because you're just like, oh, I guess I'm 4 points because this building is not going to do anything. Or whoever gets the, the Senate, that gives you 12 points right off the bat. So as long as there's space for it, you basically handed them 12 points. If they can pay for it, they got to have enough money to pay for it. But so I don't really like this with 4 at all. I wouldn't recommend this with 4 ever. But I really think it's fun as a 2-player game. You got this sort of back and forth. It's almost like a battle game in a sense, where you're kind of dealing out that same sort of hand of cards, because you're just passing and passing and passing. But then you can really have some impactful, impact on the other person across the table from you. So that really is a fun way to play the game. And I'd say if you want a 2-player game, definitely take a look at this. And then it works all right with 3. It just, like I said, it has that anticlimactic kind of feel at the end, and it gets a little bit sort of out of balance and kind of wonky there. But definitely for 2, maybe 3, but never with 4. So anyway, that's Canalis. Definitely a solid game, very interesting game because it's got drafting plus sort of join building in the center of the board, which is cool. So that's a neat sort of take on drafting. I'm kind of a sucker for drafting anyway, so that's why I'm kind of giving that horrific kind of end game with 3 and 4 players a pass. And with a 2-player, you don't usually see a good 2-player drafting game usually. If there's drafting, you need at least 3 usually, and you want like more of a mix so you can get a lot more action happening on the table. Biblios is another one that it has a drafting. It's a little bit different kind of a drafting thing, but it definitely is drafting. Yeah, so that's Canalis, good for 2. Thanks.